Hello, good evening, and welcome back to the Bundesliga show. I hope everyone is doing well this evening. We're back for some match week 6 reaction. Obviously, a really entertaining weekend that we had just gone, Mark. So entertaining that we've had to extend our featured 4 show to a featured 5. Lots to get through this evening. What was your highlight of the weekend?
Yeah, I think we just expect it in the Bundesliga nowadays, don't we? Tons of good games. I think this season it's been in keeping that the Saturday afternoon games have been the best matches, actually. And this was another weekend where that was the same. I think, obviously Union Berlin going top of the table. That's just absolutely massive, After the kind of craziness at the start of that game, with obviously going 1-0 up, then missing a penalty and then getting a goal disallowed, the game kind of petered out of it. But I thought it was a really professional performance from Union, a very hard place to go, Cologne. They were unbeaten as well before this game in the league, and they just made it look easy, really, to keep Cologne out. And I just thought that was a really impressive result for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get stuck into our countdown in a short while. Just a little bit of a reminder for everyone that is either new or returning to the show. So for starters, this season, again, we're back in partnership with the brilliant Bundesliga boxes. Got a couple of the shirts hanging from my wall behind me, just a couple of the potential German football shirts that you can get from the Bundesliga boxes, mystery ones as well. So you never know which one you're getting, and you can edit it accordingly to make sure that you don't get the same T-shirt again. So make sure you go check them out on Twitter. Go find Bundesliga boxes or indeed their website. I think Batch 23 is dropping really soon, next week, I believe, actually. So make sure you get yourself ready for another brilliant set of Bundesliga boxes. And as per, please do drop us a like on this video if you like the games that we've been bringing to you, our kind of analysis. Let us know your thoughts in the comments as ever. Just even if you want to pop in and say hello whilst it's live, or even subsequently, do let us know your thoughts. And please do press that red button and subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss out on any of our content coming out. We've got 2 shows regularly coming out a week. Obviously, we've got a fantasy football show, plus loads of other things, watch-alongs coming left, right, and centre as well. So much for you to hopefully enjoy with us. Over to you, Mark. I think we'll get cracking with the countdown because we've got a lot of football to kind of talk through, don't we?
Yeah, sure. Let's just go through the scores as well first, as you can see at the bottom of your screen. So, Augsburg on Friday night picked up their second away win of the season, 1-0 at Werder. Obviously, the big talking point is that Dutch missed a penalty as well, like in the last few seconds, really, of the match, didn't he? Which led to a very impressive win for Augsburg. RB Leipzig with a 3-0 win over Dortmund. Bayern drawing 2-2, the third straight draw for them against Rory Stuttgart. He must be quite happy with that one, but we'll talk a bit more about that later. Hoffenheim with a really good 4-1 win over Mainz. Then Hertha Berlin, improving Hertha Berlin, played out a 2-2 draw with Leverkusen. And then, of course, on the late kickoff on Saturday, Schalke in the Riviera Derby, and the second Riviera Derby this season, they beat Bochum 3-1. And then moving on, obviously, of course, Wolfsburg got a 1-0 win at Frankfurt as well for their first win of the season. Then moving on to the Sunday games, there was that 1-0 win that I already mentioned for Union at Köln. And then we finished the weekend with a 0-0 draw between Freiburg and Gladbach. So, let's move on to our 5-game countdown. And it was the game of the weekend, wasn't it? But it ended up being quite a one-sided game of the weekend. Maybe not the way some people would have thought, though, according to form. But I actually backed Leipzig in this game. I really, really fancied them. I just think, for me, just in terms of raw quality on the pitch, I just think Leipzig are a better team this season than Dortmund. But obviously, the big news before the game, it was one of those games, wasn't it, with Marco Rose returning to the Bundesliga, ironically, with RB Leipzig. Obviously, he used to coach RB Salzburg as well, so he knows the system. And obviously against his former club as well that he managed for just one season last year, Borussia Dortmund. But he came back to haunt his former club in style. And let's be honest, it didn't take long really to realise the way this game was going to go. And it was that man, Willy Orban, actually, with a header from a corner. I think we talked, Rory, in our watch along about how well Dortmund was starting to defend corners, but lo and behold, just 6 minutes into this game, Szoboszlai, who was probably the man of the match in this game, in truth, he put in a really, really good ball. It was a brilliant header, actually, from Willy Orban. Just came from nowhere and like tucked it under a few bodies, past the despairing dive of the goalkeeper, and it was already 1-0. I mean, after that, it was pretty much all one-way traffic, really, for me. It was just more and more efforts from Leipzig. I think they had another couple of chances through Timo Werner, went one-on-one. And, you know, he seems to have been carried on his form from Chelsea, doesn't he, in terms of in front of goal? Like, he just can't score at the moment, can he? He has got his first goal, but that was from a goalkeeping mistake by Cohen Schwaber a few weeks ago. But this time he went through one-on-one with the goalkeeper and just screwed it hopelessly wide. You know, 2-3 years ago, that would have been in the back of the net and 2-0. But then just before the halfway mark, we had the moment of the match, really. And it was just kind of nicely played into Szoboszlai by Simakon, the centre-half from Leipzig. Then Szoboszlai just literally let rip with the ball from probably, 35 metres out. And you can see the second it hits it, you know where it's going into the back of the net. And sure enough, it doesn't even hit the crossbar. It dips below the keeper's hand and into the back of the net. Absolutely brilliant strike. He's absolutely loving it. A player that's not always, you know, you wouldn't say he's always done what he should have done since he signed for Leipzig. Came in with big expectations from RB Salzburg as well, a Hungary international. But this was one of his better games in a Leipzig shirt. That's clear. This was probably his best goal in a Leipzig shirt as well, though he has scored a few other screamers as well. But yeah, that was 2-0 just before halftime. One goal very early in the first half and one at the very end of the first half led to a 2-0 halftime lead for the home side. And then, Rory, would you say Dortmund did much, or was it more kind of one-way traffic really in the second half?
No, well, they did struggle in general in the game. I think the stats from which said Dortmund had four shots and none on target. If I'm right in saying it was something like that. Their XGs was below 1, 0.69. Compared to, you know, Leipzig XGs of 2.27 and had 9 shots off target and 5 on target. You know, it's, you know, all very well taking the stats, but in this kind of case, it did add up. Dortmund did really struggle to kind of make any threat going forwards. I mean, one thing you do have to say here, regardless of the Marco Rose thing coming back into play and whatever else, like Dortmund have been absolutely torn to shreds by injuries again. Like they are missing a hell of a lot of players. So I think you do have to take that into consideration, you know, before you start slating Terzic or anyone else like that. I think it was quite inevitable that Leipzig were going to win this game. It was the perfect kind of game for them, coming off the back of a really bad result, the manager bounce, everything else like that. It was kind of lined up for it. Always helps when you get a worldie of a strike by Szoboszlai. As you mentioned, Mark, defending poorly from a corner, probably for the first time this season. Schlotterbeck just doesn't quite follow Orban enough. But yeah, Dortmund in the second half, sort of going off on a tangent there, but they came into a little bit more. They looked a little bit more dangerous when they brought on Gio Reyna, because he was able to get in behind the Leipzig defence a little bit more with that extra pace. The likes of Brandt and Wolf, you know, hadn't really done it during the game, and he teed up Modeste for probably their best chance, where Modeste met across and he hit it really well, but he did hit it wide of the mark. So that was to remain 2-0 until later on in the game, and Leipzig did a good press and won the ball off Dortmund fairly high up the pitch, to which the ball was played through to Werner, and Werner was able to square it very nicely for Haidara to get himself a nice tap in for 3-0 to, of course, finish the game and give Marco Rose that winning start that he so would have craved, obviously, against his former club. So yeah, really important win for Leipzig. You know, just kind of gets them a bit more momentum going forward for this season. Their form has been so very up and down. 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses, 9 goals scored, 9 against. I mean, there's some great symmetry in their stats, but then there's still not an ideal start for them, is it? If they want to be chasing, well, if they had any visions about a title race, they need to seriously up their game. Whether Marco Rose is the right man to lead them to Bundesliga glory is another question. Obviously, it seems like a nice fit. For now, the time will tell whether he can get this side playing some really good football, because they certainly got the players, as you mentioned, Mark, and the quality to do so. Nice for Szoboszlai to score that goal. I think there's so much more to come from him. Like, he almost left in the summer, which I found a really strange one. So I'm glad he stayed, and hopefully he'll start to find his best football in the Leipzig shirt. Dortmund, I think, tough. It was tough circumstances in a tough game. They just need to get themselves back. Obviously got a big match this midweek in the Bundesliga, in the Champions League. Really tough game. I think it's against City, isn't it? So that'll be tough work. But it's the best way to bounce back. So hopefully they can get themselves going again, and they just need to get some players back on that pitch ASAP.
Yeah, I think just to look at the benches of these two sides for this game basically tells you that all the story you need to know about the state where these teams are at. If you look at Leipzig, I mean, guys like Josko Gvardiol, who almost went to Chelsea, in the Benjamin Heinrichs, Haidara, Kevin Campbell, Andre Silva, Yusuf Poulsen, these are all players on the bench for Leipzig, and this was still a strong team they had out. Whereas meanwhile, obviously, Dortmund, they only have really Gio Reyna and Mukuku in an attacking position who can really do anything, and they're not exactly, the greatest track record at this level either. So you can see that Leipzig, for me, if somebody asked me the question, who has the best chance of winning the Bundesliga this year, RB Leipzig or Dortmund? For me, it's a no-brainer. RB Leipzig. I just think they've got a much better side, and for me, I think if Dortmund could finish top 4 this year, it's not a bad season. I really do, because obviously Modeste, let's be honest, he's just having a bit of a mare out there, really, isn't he, so far? I think he's been really poor, I'll be honest with you. I think he's missing chances from headers. This is meant to be his forte, knocking the ball in the back of the net from his head, but he's just not doing it this season. And, even in this game, I think at 2-1, he did miss a really good chance as well with his head, which was pretty much Dortmund's only chance of the match, to be honest. But it's just not good enough what he's been doing this season. And, they need to get Haller back as soon as possible and hope they can kind of maintain a title push. But obviously with Bayern's failures, who knows what can happen. Okay, so let's move on to the game 4. This was a really good game. I think if there had been a winner in this game, it'd probably been our number 1, let's be honest, because it really, really was. It was a classic Bundesliga game as far as I'm concerned, this one, in the Olympiastadion. Actually, two sides who haven't made the best starts of the season, but definitely Hertha Berlin. For me, I have been quite impressed with them this season since the opening day. I think they look like they've got a proper starting lineup. I do like Sandro Schwarz, the new coach, who they brought in from Dynamo Moscow. I just think Leverkusen look a side who are just lost at the moment. But as for the game, it was a very, very up and down encounter. That much is clear. And it actually went in 0-0, surprisingly. All the goals came in the second half. But I think Hertha were probably the better side in the first half, despite a couple of half chances from Schick. I think Hudson-Odoi making his debut is obviously quite a big issue as well. They went really, really attacking the Leverkusen side. They started with Schick obviously up top, and 3 behind him, Hudson-Odoi, Lozek, and Diaby as well. That's like a really, really attacking side from Leverkusen, and that kind of played into why it was probably such an attacking game, really. But yeah, as I say, it was 0-0 at halftime. There were a few chances through Luca Bacchio, who needs to kind of work on his finishing a little bit at the moment, but he is missing quite a lot of chances. Schick had a couple of half chances. Lozek as well came close to breaking the deadlock, but it was actually just into the second half when the first goal came. It was that man, Karim Demirbay. It was actually a brilliant free kick that broke the deadlock. It was just probably, in that really nice position, just a few meters to the left of the Hertha Berlin box. It was just a brilliant curling effort that did just in time beyond the dive of Christensen, who actually looks a really good keeper. He made some good saves in this match as well, Christensen. But just a few minutes later, Hertha Berlin were level, and showing that character that they didn't always show in the last couple of seasons, but they seem to be showing a bit more. It was a good goal, actually, well worked, well held up by Toussaint, who seems to have had a little bit of a kind of resurgence in his Hertha Berlin side. The ball came into him from the right side. He held it up well. played it nicely into Suat Serdar, who tucked away really, really nicely into the near post of Herdatsky, making it 1-1. And then, Rory, the carnage kind of continued, really, didn't it? What a game this was.
Yeah, it was a game of a couple of great goals as well, which obviously the next goal that went in to give Hertha Berlin the lead, and quite rightly as well. A bit of a lapse in concentration from Leverkusen, giving the ball away from a throw-in. Kind of one of those ones where you hook it first time and you think, I assume it'll go to my fullback, but it did not. The ball was picked up in midfield and they worked Hertha quickly moved the ball quickly to Richter, who came off the bench to great effect again, chested the ball down and unleashed a superb strike from distance. Obviously gave Hardecki in goal absolutely no chance, so that makes it 2-1. And you're thinking, with around 15 minutes to go, hold on for a fantastic win for Hertha, and a lot of people had been predicting it because of Hertha's improved performances so far this season, and indeed Leverkusen's poor performances. But 4 or 5 minutes later, Leverkusen were able to get themselves back through the wasteful Patrick Schick. But he did, on this occasion, make no mistake, although his finish was fairly central to the goal. I think it went straight under Christensen's legs to make it 2-2, and the game would finish that way. So, it was an interesting one because both in terms of the reactions of both teams at the final whistle, because Leverkusen players were obviously noticeably very hacked off and weren't very pleased with the result. Of course, they're trying to get themselves back going again, and it's just not quite happening still right now. The pressure on Gerardo Sirianni is increasing game by game. But they were noticeably down in the doldrums, and Hertha were very up. But from my point of view, I think Hertha, some of the players might have been disappointed, obviously not to have taken 3 points from this game. Because I think they did play really well. And we've uttered our thoughts about Hertha, particularly last season, how unimpressed we were by them. But they sit on 5 points from 6 games. But they have to take into account the 6 teams that they have played, and it has been quite tricky for them anyway. And I think you mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, Mark, that they've been competitive pretty much in every game apart from the first game of the season when Union, brushed past them fairly easily. So I have to say that they've been a lot more improved, Hertha. So, really good result for them. If they can start picking up a couple more of those draws and wins, they'll probably remove themselves from, their joint 14th, I guess, with Stuttgart and Wolfsburg on 5 points. So it is very close at that bottom third of the table. But more performances like that, and I don't think they'll find themselves there for much longer. Leverkusen, on the other hand, amazingly are below them in the table in 17th place. But as I was kind of mentioning on Twitter the other day, it's quite a scary thing for the likes of Hertha, Stuttgart, Augsburg, and Schalke, who are in positions close to the relegation zone, to see Leverkusen and indeed Wolfsburg below them, because you have to assume that both will come good or get better as the season goes on, and obviously they'll have to replace them, and if their form does improve. So Leverkusen, I don't know how many more games Sirianni will get, in this cutthroat business of management at the top level of football. I don't know about you, Mark, but I imagine that he maybe only has a couple of games left to save his season, particularly if he loses the next 2 or 3, then he'll be gone.
Part of me just feels really bad for him because he was so good last season. The style he had them playing, and finishing 3rd was above expectations. Most people thought 4th was the absolute highest that they could realistically go, but to get comfortable 3rd, I think they were only a few points off Dortmund in 2nd as well. But it's just, this season has just been an absolute living nightmare for Leverkusen. It truly has. The board backed them as well. did really well to keep Diaby and Schick at the club, you know.
Yeah.
And even back then with the likes of Hudson-Odoi and Lozek, like they've got an even better team than they did last year. But I mean, it's been a real tragedy what's happened to them. I mean, starting with the cup game as well, wasn't it? Like losing 4-3 against a third division side. It's just, you can't be doing that as Leverkusen, you know, especially when they started with like a full team in that match. And just everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong, you know. Even in midweek in the Champions League, you know, they should have got a point out of that game. And, you know, they had a goal disallowed and just like, it's just not working out. Goalkeeping errors. Hradecky hasn't been at his best this season. You know, the defense seems to have gone back to what, you know, the Peter Bosch days of a few years ago, and it's just not good enough. And as you say, they were lucky. You didn't mention the penalty incident as well, right at the end of the game. For me, I thought Hertha were really unlucky not to have the penalty for a handball, pretty much in front of the goal, really. But I don't know, the German commentator said it was a correct decision when I was watching on the German commentary. They seemed to think it wasn't an accident, a purposeful handball. But I don't know, when you block the ball with your arm on pretty much as it's going to go past you into the back of the net, surely it's got to be a penalty for me. But, you know, I think Hertha were a bit angry about that, and they probably should have got the win, as you say, really. A bit more game management, you know. They took the lead after 70 minutes, I think, in this game, and you've got to be holding out when you do that. And, you know, a bit more game management, but they were the better side, and they look the better team of these two at the moment. That's for sure. Okay, so let's move on to game 3, and it was another 2-2 draw, another entertaining 2-2 draw, but this time obviously Bayern taking the lead twice in this game before being pegged back twice by, you know, a Stuttgart side will be happy with performances, but not that happy with results, I guess. You know, they're only 2 teams without a win in the league at the moment. Them and obviously pointless Bochum being the other side. But, you know, at the same time, if you look on the half full side of the coin, you know, you could say it's only 1 defeat in 6, which is quite impressive, really, against second place Freiburg. But yeah, I mean, you can never be unhappy with a point at the Allianz, can you? Let's be honest. It's this was a really good performance from Stuttgart to go away unbeaten in this match. A game of, you know, probably the referee was kind of the star player in this match, really, at times. You know, some decisions going against Stuttgart, some going for them. But yeah, the game itself was really entertaining. I think, obviously, if you're looking at the team news, quite a lot of big team news. Sadio Mane was already dropped after just in the 6th game. You know, some of the fans haven't been overly impressed with his performances in recent weeks. And, you know, he was obviously rewarded by being dropped in this game. Thomas Muller started as a number 9, and in came the likes of Musiala. Tell as well made his full debut. And Mazraoui as well, the right back, came into the side for his first start for the Bayern Munich side. But yeah, as for the game, it started off, actually, Stuttgart had the first major chance, and it was a header from Anton that went just wide from a Sousa free kick. Sousa looking to get back into his top form after missing out on a big move over the summer. But it was actually a really, really good save as well from as Matis Tell and Gnabry forced Florian Mayer into a brilliant double save as well. And then Tell, only 17 years old, he got the opening goal in the match from the Alphonso Davies assist. Davies crossing the ball in really well from the left wing, and then I wouldn't say a simple finish from Tell, but it was, you know, it was well struck. But again, Florian Muller could have done a little bit better on this one. He could probably be forgiven after the really good double save a few minutes earlier, but yeah, probably should have done a bit better on that one, Florian Muller. But yeah, so it was 1-0 at half time, Rory, and then the second half was even more carnage, really, wasn't it?
It was an entertaining game overall. As you say, I think Stuttgart did well in the first 30 minutes of the game, and it was very even until the goal. And Stuttgart still had a threat going forwards. Obviously, head coach Pellegrini Matarazzo decided to make a change at half time to bring on Chris Führig for Thiago Tomas, who has had a bit of a dip in form for me since, well, obviously the start of the season. But, you know, I wasn't overly sure about it because Führig last season didn't look like a Bundesliga level player, but he started this season really well, actually.
Yeah.
So came on and you know, it was a constant kind of menace down the right hand side. So yeah, first of all, Stuttgart got the first of their two disallowed goals. The first of which was because of a foul by Furyk on Kimmich, in the build-up to which Guirassy, the new striker, put home from close range. So obviously at the time it stood, but obviously VAR got involved and it was disallowed as a result. It was the softer of the two disallowed goals for me. Kimmich goes down after a bit of contact on the shirt, bit of a pull by Furyk. I mean, if you're a Bayern fan, I guess you say it's clear as day that it's a foul. Obviously, as a VfB sympathiser or anyone else like that will say it's quite soft. And for me, it was. But so it was disallowed, but it didn't stop Stuttgart trying to get at Bayern still. And a bit of a poor pass by Alphonso Davies into Musiala was picked up by the rampaging, as ever, Mavropanos. Really good game again. Love how he defends on the front foot and love how he goes on his mazy runs. So which he sets up Furyk inside the box, and Furyk delivers a brilliant finish in the far corner past Neuer at great pace. So that's 1-1. However, that didn't last very long because Jamal Musiala got the ball on the edge of the box after a bit of build-up by Bayern, turned Karat-Sor inside out and then tucked away 2-1. Much to my dismay, after Stuttgart had battled so hard to get themselves back into it, it then seemed like a bit of a kick in the teeth. And it felt like it might stay that way. But again, I thought some of the Bayern subs during the match were quite strange. I thought Nagelsmann kind of thought the game was done a lot earlier maybe than it was, so he was ringing the changes. Stuttgart went a lot more offensive as well in terms of their subs. And I remember the commentary during the game, the commentators were so impressed by the fact that Bayern were really holding on and had just settled for a 2-1 win. It was all Stuttgart. They were doing the pressing. They had a lot of the ball and were trying to get forward via Sousa and Mavropanos. And then they scored the second of their disallowed goals. This time I think it was Armada. He was very industrious. He ran out of energy as the game went on. Fouled Kimmich, which again was put away by Guirassy. That one probably was a foul for me. So yeah, no complaints, but just unfortunate. But great pressing. And then Guirassy would hit the woodwork with a great effort. I think he might have got a slight deflection on it, which took it past Neuer. But again, no luck for Stuttgart there. But eventually, the luck did change their way with a penalty being given in the last minutes after a foul by apparently a foul by Matthijs de Ligt on Guirassy after he got to the ball just to get a shot away for de Ligt to follow through and hit him or make contact with him on the foot. Yeah, for me, it was a penalty. I know we've already spoke about this a little bit, Mark, before the show. So you might chime in with your thoughts on it in a sec. But and then obviously Guirassy puts it away and Stuttgart hold on. So yeah, great point. As you say, when you say that Stuttgart are one of two teams that haven't won a game so far in 6 matches, it's quite glass half empty, isn't it? And it sounds bad because it is bad. But maybe they're just going to draw their way to Bundesliga safety because they're absolutely loving it. And yeah, it's great that they haven't lost. That they've only lost one match to a very good Freiburg side. They've drawn with Bayern. They've drawn with RB Leipzig. They should have beaten Köln if it went for the red cards. They could have easily beaten Werder if it went for a last-minute goal. So in theory, you could have had an extra 4 points very easily. And you're looking at it very differently. So yeah. Interesting game. Good point for Stuttgart and 3 draws in a row for Bayern.
Yeah, I think my view on the penalties, I think we did mention it before. My view on those ones when the ball's already gone, I always think they're a little bit harsh, really. But I guess you could also argue what else can the referee do, because he does take him late, but we all know that I don't think whether de Ligt fouled him would have actually made any difference to the shot, because the shot was going high, wide, and not so handsome over the bar, and that was probably the last chance, realistically, for Stuttgart to get anything out of the game. But I do believe the way the game went, I do believe that Stuttgart had a few decisions that went against them, in truth. I think they did deserve a point from the game, as you say. I mean, you don't often see Bayern just getting penned in for like 20 minutes at the end of the game like Stuttgart did to them. And nobody watching that second half can deny that Stuttgart deserved a point from the game. And not all is not rosy at Bayern again. After a very, very good start to the season, with that win over Leipzig when they put 5 past them and then they put 6 past Frankfurt, didn't they? And everyone was just thinking, oh God, it's going to be. They put 7 past Bochum a couple of weeks after that, and everyone was thought it was going to be an absolute procession. But now 3 straight draws for Bayern, and let's be honest. I would say the Gladbach game, they were just unlucky, and really, because Sommer just had one of those games that day. But the last 2 games, I wouldn't say they deserved to win either of them against Union or Stuttgart. Yep. And, not all is looking rosy. I mean, obviously, Mane was dropped for this game. I mean, they'll probably say it was rotation, but you don't expect a £40 million signing to be dropped after just 5 games. I mean, you didn't see Lewandowski dropped, did you? Really? Like he used to miss maybe 1-2 games a season, and I do believe that it could be that he's missing too many chances in a Bayern Munich shirt. Obviously, he did get off the bench in the end, but he didn't do very much, did he? And it's just, not all's that rosy for Bayern again. And, Nagelsmann, a few more draws and pressure could start coming over him again, because he didn't overly impress the Bayern fans last season. He didn't. I wouldn't say he didn't. He's not unpopular with the fans, but I wouldn't say they were like really purring over him like they were with Hansi Flick, his predecessor. But I just think. Improvement is needed. He was unlucky to lose Lewandowski, who obviously will have the reunion tomorrow night, actually, in the Allianz, which is a massive game. But he's got to start winning more games in the Bundesliga, and he's got to start. He started the Champions League well with that brilliant win against Inter that we covered. But, they've got to start winning games in the Bundesliga because, they're currently sitting 3rd after 6 games. And we know that's not acceptable for a Bayern Munich side. And obviously they go to Augsburg next, and we're going to have to see what happens. Yeah, a comment in as well from Landla here. Can we say Bayern missed Lewandowski's goals? And Mane is not what you all thought he was. I'm a Liverpool fan, by the way. Would you say they are, Rory? Are they missing Lewandowski's goals, would you say? Or?
Well, it's the easiest statement to read out in a Bundesliga season, isn't it? Yeah. It's quite clear that they missed the striker. His goals is the way that they build up around him. Mane is a very different type of striker, usually a world-class operator who's obviously come into a new league. And a lot of the Bayern fans aren't overly impressed by him. Does this mean that Mane won't go on to score 20, 25 goals plus this season? No, he could well come back and absolutely storm the league very easily. So I think, obviously, one thing of you don't really have time in Bayern to impress, whether you're a player or a manager, Nagelsmann, etc. So he will have to hit the ground running sooner rather than later before the fans do really start to get on his back. But I think he's completely capable of doing so.
Yeah, I think my issue is that I'm not sure that Mane is a number 9. I've always had that question about him. Obviously, most of his time at Liverpool, he played out wide, and I thought that was his position, really. I don't think his finishing is quite good enough to be and I don't think he's big enough of a presence to be a Bundesliga number 9. That's the problem. I think the Bundesliga is a very physical league with a lot of big guys, and I think Mane is 5'9" or so. Like Lewandowski is a good 6'2" or so. So and a lot more physical too. And if you look at a lot of number 9s in the Bundesliga, they're like 6'3", 6'4" giants, really. So it might be that they have to move him out wide after all at some stage. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually look to do that further on in the season. Anyway, without further ado, let's move on to game 2. And this is a different part of the table, isn't it, that we're talking about? It was the bottom 2 going into the match, actually, because obviously this was the late kickoff on Saturday night. Schalke had 3 points before kickoff. Bochum had 0. Obviously, the big news coming out of this defeat for Bochum, Rory, I'll go over to you and ask you about it. Obviously, Thomas Rice has lost his job. You asked me before about Sioane, and I just think it's so sad when this happens, because he was so good last season. He was I think he came 3rd in manager of the season in the Bundesliga. That's how good he was. He took a very much unfancied Bochum side to 13th last season. But Obviously, it's only taken him 6 games this season to lose his job. He's lost all 6 games. What do you think of that decision?
Well, the writing was on the wall, wasn't it? From the results point of view, yeah, completely poor. Their transfer business, or lack of it, or their outgoings has been very noticeable. I mean, so much so that Schalke, a team that's been promoted, have a former Bochum striker in Petre who scored against them in this game to win the match for them. Well, to confirm the win 3-1 late on. So what more do you have to say? You're selling players to your rival relegation candidates and it's coming back to bite you already. There was a lot of conversations about Thomas Reis and whether he'd agree a contract extension. It couldn't be agreed because of the representatives weren't able to do that. I guess the club at the time as well was holding back because of the results on the pitch. They probably saw it going south quite quickly, so they didn't want to reinvest in him. I think it is sad. He did so well to bring Bochum up from the Zweite. Amazingly good debut season. They, much like how we kind of described them last season, how industrious they were. And towards the end of the season, they were playing some really good football as well. Gerrit Holtmann, the bulk of Messi, we loved it all. And Simon Zola coming back from a really bad injury at the end of the season, feel good story. What more could you want as a Bochum fan by the end of the season? But yeah, it has probably soured now. And it will take a lot for them to come out of this kind of spell of football with a positive note. But the man who comes into the job will just have to try and reinvigorate the players, because they have pulled the trigger so early on. They're what I'll see in terms of the table. As soon as they get when they get that win, in theory, if they go in next week, they'll be 1 point behind Leverkusen, and then they'll be 2 behind Wolfsburg and Hertha and Stuttgart. Like, it starts to look a lot more positive straight away. But obviously, it just depends where that win's coming from, because I don't know about you, Mark, but at the moment, it's hard to see where it's coming from, especially because they just look so goal shy.
Yeah, I think defensively too. I think defensively has been even more of an issue this year. Yeah, I mean, this was a side that a lot of people are actually tipping them to beat, because a lot of people hadn't really been that impressed with Schalke either before this game, and a lot of people thought they'd come good. But to me, they were well beaten really in the game. I mean, they were just another interesting stat. They actually lined up this game with the highest average age of any Bundesliga match in history, actually, in this game. And like, most of the players were over 30. It's they sold all of the young talent. Your Bella Kotchaps, Leach. They were all sold, and even Poulter, I don't think he's that young. I think he's early 30s as well. Like, obviously, to sell him to a relegation rival is just suicide, really, isn't it? And it's just. Yeah, for me, the writing was on the wall before the season. I had them down as 18th, and I stand by it, to be honest. I just didn't think they had a good enough team to compete this season. As I say, most of the best players left. They had a few loan signings. I think they only managed to get one of those loan signings back in, and they just had a bit of a mess so far, to be honest. But as for the game, it was Riemann actually made a couple of good saves from a former Nuremberg man, and actually Tom Kraus as well. He had a couple of shots wide. But unfortunately, Osano, who probably is the best Bochum player nowadays, he went off very early on. He was injured. I'd probably say him and Holtmann are probably their only threats, really, in most games nowadays, because Zoller hasn't had his best start to the season, I wouldn't say, really, despite the 2 goals against Hoffenheim. But yeah, so he was off after just a few minutes. Obviously, Rice, knowing that he needed a win to try and get the win. Actually, surprisingly, Holtmann actually only came on as a sub as well, which just seemed madness to me, really, because he has been pretty good this season so far. He had a good shot, which was well saved by Folov. And then, obviously, Lamproulos skied the loose ball over, which was a half chance. Terodde, who actually, is a bit of a cult hero, isn't he? He was actually causing a few problems. He just doesn't seem to have the touch to get the goals in the Bundesliga, does he? But obviously, his Zweite record is ridiculous, actually. I was looking at the stats for Terodde, actually, in midweek, and he's scored like 6 separate seasons, 20-plus goals in this Zweite. That's just ridiculous, really, isn't it? But in the Bundesliga, he does tend to struggle, although he has been getting starts for Schalke of late, which is quite encouraging for him. He had a few chances, but It was after 38 minutes that the goal eventually came, and it was actually Bulter's speculative effort, which was actually fumbled by Riemann, who Riemann, like the star of last season, I would say he's also not been in his top form the first 6 games this season. He spilled a shot to Drexler, who comfortably tucked home, much to the delight of a brilliant crowd as well from Schalke. Like, they fill that ground every single week. It's fantastic. Good away support from Bochum as well at this Riviera Derby match. But yeah, it was 1-0 at half-time, and to be honest, at the time, you were thinking the writing's on the wall for Bochum and for Rice, but they did actually spring back quite well, didn't they, at first, Rory?
Yeah, they did. And just after half-time, Zola did get his 3rd goal of the season. Again, didn't really know much about it, did he? As a good bit of play between Holtmann and Hoffmann, and to which they work the ball into the area, and the shot comes in and is going in, and Zola's kind of like trying to jump over it, I don't know if he is trying to score, but anyway, it hits him on the way in. So obviously, very rightly, all the Schalke players are saying, well, that's offside, isn't it? But so they do check it, much to Zola's relief. He isn't offside, and so the goal stands after a VAR check. So Bochum did, they got themselves back into it. But yeah, that kind of woke up Schalke. The pressure was building. They were, the home side were coming again. There was a lot of pressure. Like Terodde again hit the crossbar. Salazar again drew a good save from Ryman. Again, bit of an up and down game from him, as you said, Mark. But the pressure eventually did tell. Good free kick whipped in by Mohoa, but it was dangerous and low in that pace, and unfortunately Masovic, from Bochum point of view, put it into his own net, deflected in. I mean, quite a lot of own goals this weekend actually, and hard one to defend. So very good set piece. And as we've already mentioned, the icing on the cake was Poulter heading in a really good header, actually, from quite a way out, and a long kind of deep ball into him. So which obviously made it 3-1, and the game was done. So huge 3 points for Schalke, and then all of a sudden it starts to look a lot more rosy for them in terms of the table. I mean, they're up to 12th from that, and I mean, they've been hard to beat. Lost 2 out of the 6 games. 3 draws along the way. Maybe obviously want to just address the goals conceded column, but if you take off the 6 that they conceded against Union, I know you can't just do that, but then it's only 7 goals in 5 matches. So again, not too bad at all. So both the promoted teams are sitting pretty in the table, and both of them are in mid-table. So they've both been doing well. Werder obviously came unstuck on Friday night, but could quite easily have won or even drew that game. So both have impressed to a certain degree. I think, obviously Schalke probably less so, but I always felt confident that they were going to win this game in front, as you mentioned, of a packed out stadium in Gelsenkirchen. I think they were good value for their money. And Bochum obviously have reacted in accordance with getting rid of head coach Thomas Rice. So very interesting to see who is brought in, and indeed how they react this weekend.
Absolutely. So let's move on to the game of the day. And I think it was definitely a game of the day if you were a Hoffenheim fan, not a Mainz fan. But obviously Mainz came into the game with 3 wins from 3 away from home. It seemed incredibly they played 4 of the first 6 games away from home, Mainz. So the fixture list hasn't been the kindest to them, really. As obviously they came into this game on the back of a really, really good win at Gladbach, which I don't think anyone thought they would get, really, did they? But it was a fantastic win for them. That one. But again, just like I remember the only other defeat that Mainz had before this game was against Leverkusen, surprisingly. The only game Leverkusen have won. They made a good start in that game too. And once again, they did in this, actually. The captain, Sylvain Widmer, one of my favourite Bundesliga players, of course, he called Oliver Baumann into action just after 3 minutes with a good shot. Johnny Burkhardt also had a really, really good effort as well early on, but unfortunately he got injured after about 20 minutes, which is unfortunate. He's had a bit of a kick, kind of hit and miss start to the season, only with a couple of knocks and he got that own goal as well against Leverkusen, but he was off. He went straight down the tunnel, so he didn't look too good. He was replaced by Bergsorg. But yeah, then basically that was pretty much when the tide turned really, and Hoffenheim started to get the better of the play. Yeah, and eventually the big turning point really was when actually Ruta was played through onto Jorginho. Ruta was played through on goal, and then Alexander Hack literally hacked him down. I've got to get that one in there. I'm not pardon.
Yeah, I mean,
literally like he hacked him down when he was through on goal, which meant the straight red card just before half time. And there was a bit of deliberation with this one, wasn't there? Because it looked initially that it was outside the box, the foul on Jorginho. But Jorginho had done quite well, and he just managed to get his foot onto the kind of the borderline. A penalty was given, actually, for this one as well. So it was like the double blow, really, for Mainz. The straight red card for Hack, and then the penalty. And you're thinking, Kramaric, no chance, this can go wrong. And what happens? But he screws it miles wide, really, of the post, doesn't he? Like, it's a horrendous penalty from the talisman, the long-term talisman of Hoffenheim. And Mainz do go in at 0-0, actually, at half-time, which is quite surprising. But really, in that second half, Rory, you're not going to see a much more one-sided second half than that in the Bundesliga, right?
Yeah, Hoffenheim turned up a gear or two in the second half. Kramaric firstly acrobatically scoring the first goal after a good bit of work by Jorginho Ruta. And another kind of turning point in this game before the rest of the goals would happen is Onisiwo, Karimat Onisiwo, who's has been leading the line well for Mainz and does work well in partnership with Burkhardt most of the time when they're fit together. But he was sent through clean on goal, but he couldn't get himself sorted out, couldn't take the ball with him basically, and ended up Hoffenheim were able to come back and defend the situation as Onisiwo kind of messed it up. After that, I think Hoffenheim realised that we really knew we need to put this game to bed against 10 men, and they were able to do so. Kaderabek, often involved down the right-hand side, had a really good game. His cross was touched back by Baumgartner really nicely to Promel, who drove it home to the bottom corner 2-0. Followed up by a third. Nice little cheeky back heel by Dabur from an Angelino shot. Ironically, I think on the Bundesliga website it says David Raum. They haven't updated their information. So that was quite ironic. When I was reading the match report, I thought, I'm not sure that's quite right. Obviously, feeling very nostalgic, clearly. But Mainz, obviously, they never give up. So the 10 men managed to grab a goal back through Dominic Cahor. Good finish from just on the edge of the area after a good bit of play. So that, gave him maybe a spark of hope, but that was doused down by the fourth goal, eventually coming from Kaderabek as Hoffenheim broke forward in numbers. Kramaric setting him up, and the attacking fullback doing well to chip it over the keeper to make it 4-1 and cap off. Yeah, a really good second half performance. As you mentioned, the red card has a huge impact on this game, but it helps Hoffenheim's good start of the season continue, Mark. The one game where they've looked really blunt and maybe out of sorts was our watch along when they lost to Dortmund 1-0. Otherwise, they've been coming forward really well. Scoring goals. They're sitting fourth at the moment in the league, joint on points with Bayern and Dortmund. Have scored a good amount of goals. I think they've scored 12 goals, but the 12 goals have come from 9 different players, I think, so far. Yeah. So obviously we're saying that Kramaric is the talisman, but he's been struggling a little bit for goals. Obviously the penalty miss, but he's being backed up by the rest of the team, which is a really good thing from a team point of view and showing that they are dangerous coming forward, but maybe they just need someone, whether it's a Ruta or someone else, Dabur, can kind of pick up the slack for Kramaric, because at the moment his goal scoring form is maybe not where he would want it to be. He's always in and around the attacking third and being involved assists wise for Hoffenheim. That's how they play around him. But yeah, good stuff from Hoffenheim. Mainz, bit of a blip. You can put the red card down to that. Good chance for Onisiwo. You never know what happens if he scores that to make it 1-1 in the second half. So their away form was the big thing last season. They've already addressed it so far this season. And yeah, bad loss for them on the weekend, but I'm sure they'll come roaring back. And other than that, they obviously have had a good start to the season anyway. Still in 6th place, only their second loss. But they've only scored 6 goals in 6 games. So that's maybe the one area that they'll be looking to improve. But, depending on how bad Burkhardt's injury is, the pressure will fall onto Onisiwo and other players like that to maybe give them some needed goal-scoring threat.
Yeah, definitely. I think if the league was only 10 games every season, I think Hoffenheim would be in the top 4 every year, wouldn't it? They're one of those clubs that always seem to come flying out of the blocks every season, but I do like Brighton Writer from what I've seen so far, though. He seems to be a good fit there. He seems to be a lot more positive than Hernes, who at times seemed a little bit, dejected on the touchline, didn't he? But he just seems to be really enjoying the job there at Hoffenheim, Brighton Writer, and I just think could be a good fit, that one. It could be a case of that. But as you say, we've seen it far too many times from Hoffenheim that they've come flying out of the blocks. They've looked really good and they blitz some teams. They can often do that, Hoffenheim. They win a lot of games by big score lines, Hoffenheim, and they're never short of goals, are they? But the thing is, can they keep it going? When they lose a couple of games, will they have the mental strength to kind of bring them back? I think one of the issues for Hoffenheim is they don't have the best home support. I'm sure Hoffenheim fans would agree with me, and I think they get consistently the lowest home attendances in the Bundesliga every season. Obviously a very small club from a village, so I guess when things do go wrong, they don't have that crazy support of a team like a Köln or an Union Berlin to kind of bring them back, But hopefully, I'd like to see Hoffenheim up there again. They're a pretty likable club from an English perspective. I know that the German people don't feel the same all the time, but yeah, I think from an English perspective, a lot of people like them and they play good football, and it would be nice to see them maybe get back into Europe again ahead of next season. As for Mainz, as you say, very, very compact side, but the red card did them in this game, really, didn't it? I think if it had not been for the red card, they could have potentially got a draw out of this game because they were doing quite well until the red card, basically. But I don't think Bo Svensson will be that upset about the result because he knows that the red card was probably the main catalyst for the pretty heavy defeat in the end. Okay, so I think that pretty much rounds us up. Any closing thoughts, Rory, or we go straight ahead to the closure?
No, not anything special from me. Just to say, obviously, to keep an eye out for the fantasy show on Thursday. It'll be a slightly shorter one again before we go into the international break. And then we'll be doing a big fancy draft again after that. And probably no watch-alongs this week either, but we'll obviously keep people posted on that as and when we do our next one.
Absolutely. So, yeah, just to close up. So if you enjoyed what you saw today, then Out Over the Bar being Out Over the Bar Extra, remember to check that out. Remember our website, otbfootball.net. And also don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe because it helps us with the algorithm and all that stuff. So, yeah, as Rory said, we'll see you again on Thursday for the Fantasy Football Show. So, ciao. See you then, guys. Bye.
Cheers all.